Being that as I live in the UK, you might often wonder why every so often we sometimes take a look across what's happening across the pond and wonder how that might affect the UK, or not only just the UK, but the rest of the world, because what America tends to do does have a very large global impact, especially when you've got another election coming up and the possibility of a, heaven forbid, another 4 years of Donald Trump. After all, he's only going to be dictator for a day. What's to worry about? But as we have said before many, many times, there are huge, huge security implications for the rest of us here in Europe if Donald Trump becomes president. Not least, of course, for Ukraine, which is why, as I continue to try and advocate, not only once David Lammy becomes very likely the foreign minister, maybe within the next possible 6 months or so, potentially, we'll see. But if Trump does become president, Lammy and the rest of Europe needs to get together, because Donald Trump has come out and said, shockingly enough, that if he is the president of the United States and Europe were to be attacked, that he would never come to help. This would be music to Putin's ears, because if Donald Trump is now president of the United States within 2025, then this opens huge potential avenues for a conflict with NATO. And best of all, Putin knows, well, I know the US is not going to get involved, because after all, Trump has very handily told European leaders, I ain't interested in getting involved. So Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Poland, Moldova, Romania, just this is kind of shocking, really shocking. This is the type of stuff I have been warning you about, not only on this channel, but where we've talked about it on Geoscope as well. And we'll probably be talking about this next week as well, because this has huge consequences down the road. Something we need to be warning about and thinking, how on earth do we combat this? Because this is a massive foreign policy problem that we should be paying attention to. And as I've always said, the left, I think, is very weak when it comes to foreign policy. I don't think it talks about it enough. I don't think it thinks that it matters enough to its conversations, which very often cede the ground to the right wing, who pretty much occupy every and all conversations when it comes to talking about foreign policy. Hence why it is really important that we do talk about these kinds of things when the potential leader of the US says these types of things. So we're going to have a look at what he said, and of course why eventually this becomes music to Putin's ears, and why in particular the Russians have said they are willing to fight up until 2025. As far as they are concerned, this year they don't really need to attack. They just need to hold on and defend their current positions, because they know there's a whole likelihood Donald Trump might win. And if he does win, well, there ain't going to be any more US aid. So before we go into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And also down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the one foundation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. There's the YouTube thank you button, and of course, the Pony Club down below as well. So thank you very much to everyone who does help and support the channel. Like I say, please do click on the like and share button. And oh boy, let's get into this, because yeah, this is worrying. So, this was reported in The Guardian with the title of Trump told European leaders that the US will never come to help you. Donald Trump told the president of the European Commission that in 2020 that the US would never come to help if Europe was attacked, and also said that NATO is dead, as senior European commissioner has said. Multiple news outlet sources says the exchange between Trump and Ursula von der Leyen at the World Economic Forum back in Davos in 2020 was described in Brussels on Tuesday by Thierry Breton, a French European commissioner responsible for the internal market with responsibilities including defense, in which he said, "You need to understand that if Europe is under attack, we will never come to help you, to support you," Trump said, according to Breton, who was speaking at the European Parliament. And according to Breton, Trump said, "By the way, NATO is dead and we will leave. We will quit NATO." Bear in mind, at the moment, because of the invasion of Ukraine, and thankfully because of Joe Biden's in office, not Trump, you have seen not only people realizing, oh, actually, this is why we need NATO. This is why NATO exists. You've seen Finland and Sweden go, oh, damn, we need to be in NATO. You've seen countries like the Baltic states, Poland, Moldova, Romania, a lot of these Eastern European countries who joined NATO in the 90s exactly because they feared a return of Russian aggression, very much be justified. So, this continues. According to the Jerusalem Post, Trump added, "By the way, you owe me 400 billion because you didn't pay, you Germans, what you had to pay for defense." As the German defense minister Ursula von der Leyen was among the European officials who pushed back at Trump on the issue of funding. But the threats to quit NATO and demands that European nations increase contributions to it were a much feature, of course, of Trump's presidency, as concern over his opaque and apparent submissive relationship with Vladimir Putin. Trump's claims to understand the Russian president, who said that he waited until Trump was out of office before invading Ukraine. Well, this also really throws that claim into doubt that, oh, apparently he only attacked because Trump wasn't in office. Would he have still attacked? I still think he would have. And it brings huge complications now. If Trump had won in 2020, would have Trump authorized the amount of US funding and US support that we have seen going to Ukraine? I don't think he would have. I don't think he would have at all. And one of the things, again, oh my God, praising Boris Johnson. But to be honest, the fact that Boris Johnson got out there, of course, very, very, very much prodded at the fact by the time defense minister to say, hey, no, you need to support Ukraine. And, Boris Johnson got out there and he did do a lot of rallying around European support to get support to Ukraine. So he should be, at least commended for that, as pushed as he felt into it. But that's a topic for another time, and we've talked about that before. But it does raise some serious concerns, of course, about the future and why David Lammy should absolutely have a plan as to what should happen. Not only, of course, if Biden should win, but of course, what should happen if Trump wins. That, of course, is the immediate threat, not only just to Ukraine, but now to the rest of Europe, where Trump has basically said, we ain't coming to help you. So, back in Brussels, Breton reported on Trump's 2020 remarks were, quote, a big wake-up call and warned he may come back. The first contest of this year's Republican presidential primary, the Iowa caucus, takes place on Monday. Of course, Trump currently faces 91 legal charges in an attempt to try and keep him off the ballot with associated civil threats. Yet he enjoys huge polling leads over his closest rivals, Ron DeSantis and the hard right-wing governor of Florida, and Nikki Haley, a former South Carolina governor and ambassador to the UN. Polling regarding the national general election between Trump and Joe Biden shows a very close contest, with Trump often in the lead. Now more than ever, we need to know that we are on our own, of course, Politico reported Breton is saying. saying, we are a member of NATO, almost all of us. And of course, we have allies, but we have no other options but to increase drastically spending on arms in order to be ready for whatever happens. Trump's campaign did not immediately comment. This is reality. This is the reality. We now have to, and even a future Labour government, even other governments in Europe are now going to have to go. We're going to have to increase our spending. We are going to have to increase our spending commitments to defence. That is just now the reality of the situation. If Trump is not going to sort of come to the defence of Europe with NATO commitments or anything like that, then our we as Europeans are faced with no other option that we now have to increase our defense spending. There is no other option. And I know a lot of people will say, oh, because obviously the traditional leftist stance is you don't understand. Instead, we should be spending instead on bombs and bullets, we should be spending it on healthcare and books for education. I get it. I understand. But this is the reality. This is the world we live in. That if we do not have the those guns and ammo, then it raises further questions as to whether we've seen throughout since the invasion of Ukraine, Putin constantly testing UK air defenses. And fighters have had to be scrambled from bases in Scotland to meet those potential threats. This is the reality that we face. Putin only understands the use of force. And sometimes you have to meet force with force. Like it or not, that is the reality of the world. That is the reality that the Ukrainians themselves are now living with. And if we don't support them, then what happens if he goes, well, I'm going to go into the rest of Ukraine. I'm going to go into the Baltic countries because we want a larger Baltic coast shoreline. There are huge problems in all this. And remember, during Syria and other crises that happened during Trump's presidency, time and time and time again, Trump would throw allies consistently under the bus. If Trump does become president, then we have to take his word seriously. And of course, remember what Breton said. We are all members of NATO, but if Trump is in office, we are alone on that front, meaning that we have to defend ourselves. So, yeah, that is the reality on this. And I think that not only, of course, should we discuss this about foreign policy, but even in the matters of defense, this is something that, once again, the left does not do well and needs to be better in. Because how on earth, if let's set the scenario for you, how on earth, if we've got Trump in the White House, meanwhile you've got Putin potentially looking at, again, taking the Baltic countries or closing the Suwalki Gap and then threatening the Baltic countries, what do we do? That is the the reality. That is the situation that then gets put forward to us. How should we respond in that regards? And one of the only things we can do in that regard to avoid that potential situation is make sure that we are prepared in case. And I think even though a lot of people would disagree, there now and should be arguments on the left given the threat that we are now facing once again from Russia, that defense spending should be a priority for us on the left. Not just only to defend ourselves here in the UK, but to defend our allies in Europe as well. Because Trump has made it clear, if he wins, we're on our own. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.